I was in New York City on September the 11th. I had arrived the night before. I was there for work. I went to the World Trade Center to attend a seminar. It was a beautiful fall day. I mean, the sky was such a deep shade of blue, no clouds. It was perfect. And walking into the Trade Center building, I called my husband on my cell phone and wished him good morning, talked to him and the children, and told my sons that I would see them after soccer practice. I would be home. About 15 minutes into the seminar, that's when the building rocked. And the projector flew across the room, bookcases came down tumbling, the desks moved, everything just, the whole room just shook. And you looked outside the window and you could see metal and glass and paper and all kinds of stuff starting to come down. I mean, all right, there had been an explosion, obviously, but nobody knew what kind. And not even 5 minutes after this, the security guards were coming down the hall running, "You've got to get out now." They let us out in separate groups of 10. When we got out on the stairwell, they were narrow. They were only like wide enough for 2 people or so. These were not great big staircases. They had us stand because they were trying to get the people out from the floors below us. So we were standing there waiting, and nobody was crying or screaming. People looked fearful, they looked concerned, because we didn't know what had happened. And a gentleman's pager had gone off. And he started shouting, "A plane hit the building." Well, that's when we knew what had happened. I mean, we were by 2 airports, so, it's like, okay, small, whatever, small plane, big plane, nobody knew. And that I started praying. My parents are deceased. I was praying for their help and prayed to God, please let all of us get out of here alive. We got down to about the 45th floor, and the firemen had started coming up the steps, so everything had to stop because you had to make room for them coming up the steps. Lieutenant was leading the group coming up the steps, and he grabbed my arm and he says, "Lady, what did you see? What did you hear, and what did you smell? What floor did you come from?" I said, "Nothing was happening on the 55th floor. It was quiet." And he started shouting over the railing and told him to make the call down that the fire hadn't gotten to the 55th floor yet. And then everybody was like, "Oh, the building's on fire." We didn't know the building was on fire. The lieutenant told me, he says, he saw the fear in my face. And let me tell you, I saw the fear in his eyes. And this man had to be in his 50s, and he's a fireman in the New York Fire Department, had to have seen every horrible thing imagined. And if he was this afraid, then afraid I should be scared to death. And I was. The next thing I knew, they were throwing bottles of water at me and the person beside me, and then big rolls of paper towel. Break open the bottle of water, put it on the paper towel, and put it on your face, in front of your face, so you could breathe. The smell of diesel fuel in the stairwell was pretty bad. The lights had gone out in the stairwell and then came back on an emergency power, but it was rather dark and shadowy. I prayed to St. Jude, who's my patron saint, and I said, "Not today. Today, dear God, I just can't be a lost cause today, dear Lord," because that's who he's patron saint of, lost causes. Not today. I said, "I need my guardian angel here beside me." I said, "I need her bad." And I kept praying. Well, the line started moving again. They brought down people that had cuts and bruises, burns. The last person they brought down, the line had to completely stop again. Well, we stopped quite frequently. That's why people kept saying, why did it take so long? But it took a while. When I got down to about the 10th floor, I finally believed we were going to get out of the building. We got further down, and they started yelling from the bottom to be careful on the steps. The steps were covered with water. The sprinkler system had burst in the building. When we got down to the very bottom, I'm standing knee-deep in water. Now, I'm short, okay, and I had 3-inch heels on, but it was just unbelievable. There was a Port Authority policeman at the very bottom. The Port Authority policemen told us that they were letting us out in groups of 10. We were going to walk through a sheet of water. There was a wall of water coming down. And we were in the subway area of the World Trade Center. We were beneath the building. And whatever we did, hold on to the person in front of us on their shoulder. A fireman was going to come, and he had a flashlight on his helmet, and he would lead us out. And he started walking us around, and it's totally dark. You know how your eyes get accustomed to the darkness? And you're seeing these huge pieces of concrete laying on the subway tracks, and then just hunks of it scattered. And we're weaving around all this. And then he came up to a rampway, and as all of us come up the ramp, he looked at us and he says, when I open this door, you'll be in the mall area lobby of the World Trade Center. And when I open this door, I want you to run, and I want you to run for your life. And he threw open that door, and all of a sudden there was all this brightness. And you're running, and you're looking around, and there were firemen working on people, bandaging them up. There were EMTs trying to help people, and they kept screaming at us to run, don't stop. Come out the other side of the mall area, out into the street, and it was more chaotic out there than it had been inside the building. There were fire trucks and police cars, and they also were helping people and yelling at us to run. And you wondered, why are they screaming at us to run, and they're helping people, not moving them out of the area. Well, what they knew that we didn't was that the building was going to come down. We were out in the street, and everybody's looking around, and all of a sudden you heard this horrific noise. And it was the building. From the building falling, and then with the cloud, it just wiped everything out. There was no noise. It was just silence. And I thought for sure that I had died. It was like, you didn't make it out. You're dead. And I'm screaming, and I started crying. And I'm still running. I hadn't stopped. And I heard this woman's voice. She said, reach out your hand. And I had no idea what I was reaching out to, but I reached out my hand, and the next thing I knew, there was another hand wrapped around mine. And as the clouds started to dissipate, I saw the woman beside me, and there was a man beside her. And we're still moving. Out of nowhere, this taxi cab appeared out of this fire truck. And he says, lady, you can't be up here. This is the Brooklyn Bridge. And that's how I knew where I finally was. He says, come in, I'll take you to I'll take you to the police station, I'll take you to the hospital. And we were all we looked like ghosts. We were covered with the soot and everything from what had just happened. And I told him, I said, you got to take me to the airport. He said, I can't take you to the airport. I said, I'm going home. I want to see my family. I'm going home. He says, lady, I think you're in shock. I'm going to take you to the hospital. I tried to get a hold of my husband. And I thought, who can I call that even knows that I'm here? So I called Vicki Meck, a friend of ours, lives down in Youngwood. And I called and I said, Vicki. And there was this pause. And she says, yes. And I said, this is Judy. Do you know where Jean is? And she says, who is this? And I said, Vicki, it's really me. And she says, it can't be you. We watched the building come down. You're dead. And I said, I'm not dead. I'm on the other end of this phone. And I can't find Jean. And I left him a message. And I didn't know if he knew what was going on. And I just need to talk to him and the boys. And she started crying. She says, are you sure this is you? And I said, you have 2 daughters. And I told her their names. And she says, oh my God, it is really you. I had forgotten that my son Brian, who was in middle school over at Wendover, had to go to the orthodontist that day. And Jean had left work to go and take him. What I later found out is Jean had to stop and pick up Brendan at elementary school earlier in the day. Right after it happened, the building came down. His teacher had put it on the television set in the classroom as a current event. And he went screaming out of the classroom to the principal's office. My mother's there, my mother's there. And I need my dad. You think of what you yourself went through that day, and it was like I had to be ripping my family apart because they didn't know what was going on. And my husband, when they called me from the dentist office, once Vicki got a hold of him, there's all this yelling and cheering. And I'm thinking, what are you all doing? And they said, we're all so glad that you're alive. And I got to speak to my husband. And I said, I love you. I love the boys. And I can't wait to be home. My husband met me at the turnpike down in New Stanton. And I just hugged him and hugged him. And I couldn't hold on tight enough. And he thanked everybody for bringing me home. And then I said, where are the boys? They weren't with him. And he says, they're at home. And I said, you came without them? And he says, they're at home, they're fine. Well, when we came around the bend on our way home, down at the bottom of the hill, coming up the hill on either side of the road, all the trees have been tied with yellow ribbons. And there was a big banner across the house, welcome home, Judy. My friends and family and loved ones were here waiting for me, and we celebrated life. And that's what it's about. It's just, I try to tell people, people says, well, how did you really get through it? And I said, your faith, courage. I tell my children, you can't be afraid. I don't want you to be afraid. You have to have courage, you have to have faith, you have to believe. You don't want to live in fear. And that's what I believe. The terror acts that took place that day affected so many families and brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles across the country. And for the longest time afterwards, the country was pulled together closer than I think I've seen it in a long time. But I think it's important for people to know what happened that day. I volunteer up at the Flight 93 Memorial Site in Shanksville. The people who died that day in the plane crash were true heroes. And I find peace and solace up there. I volunteer to show my respect and to make other people aware of what happened that day so no one ever forgets.